Hello viewers, today we'll be looking at the poem Good Timber by Douglas Mallock. Clearly from the title we can tell this poem's going to be about trees in some way. So let's jump straight in. The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but stood out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. These little scrubs here. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in trees and men good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of strife. This is the common law of life. So what do we think the main message of that poem was? I think what I'd say to that question is that the poem is aiming to express that humans, like trees, have to face adversity to become stronger and have to overcome obstacles to learn from them and grow from that. And it's through this resilience and overcoming difficulties that makes people strong. So I've put the whole poem on this slide, and we can just go through some of the techniques that allowed me to come to that conclusion. So, in the first line, it says the tree that never had to fight. When I see that word had to, I can see that the poet is trying to convey that this plant has almost been spoilt in a way. The poet could have written the tree that never fought for sun and sky, but instead they've included the words had to. The tree that never had to fight. So that implies that most people or most trees do have to fight, but this one never had to. And like the never there is obviously high modality. So immediately we're thrown into this poem and we can see that the message is being conveyed immediately. There's no brief description or building the setting. It's straight into the point. So this tree never had to fight for these elements of life, sky, sun, sky, air, and light, so on. Instead, it just stood out in the plain, always got what it needed. Okay? And it never became a king because of that. And it died a little scrubby thing, a small plant. And now the poem repeats a lot of the same language and structure as the first stanza and the second stanza. So now instead of being the tree, it's now the man. And he never had to toil. So toil is to work. He never had to do all of these things that he needs. Okay, he never had to win. And this is very similar to what we saw in our first stanza. Okay? And instead of never becoming a forest king, he never became a manly man. Okay? But lived and died as he began. So these two stanzas are very closely linked. Okay, they're very similar. And the poet's purposely done that just to draw the link. To draw the link between a tree that's had everything given to it without it having to fight for it is very similar to a man or a woman who's being given everything they need in life. Someone who's spoilt and hasn't had to face some of life's difficulties. And then the third stanza just further emphasizes the message by saying, good timber does not grow with ease, so it's not easy. The stronger the wind, the stronger the tree has to be. The higher up the sky is, the further up the tree has to grow to reach the sky. The more the storm, the more the strength. So it's just providing examples now to illustrate how the poet's idea that strength comes from overcoming difficulties. And finally, the last stanza, where thickest lies the forest growth. So obviously if there's a huge dense forest, it's hard for the trees to get light because there's so many trees competing, trees competing for space and water and soil and so on, so they have to keep growing bigger than the ones around them. So where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both. So a patriarch is a word that means like a male leader. So like a king is a patriarch. And the opposite of patriarch is a matriarch. So with an M instead of a P, and that's if a woman is the leader. So in these thick, dense forests, we find the patriarchs, so the strongest trees, and if there's a man that's had to overcome so many obstacles, he'd be a patriarch. Okay, and they hold council with the stars, so council is like discussion. So these big trees are so high up in the sky, they can talk to the stars. And if we see broken branches on the trees or scars on the men, we can see that they've faced many traumas and fought through turmoil to become the mighty people that they are. And this is the common law of life. This is a lesson that we all should learn and thus not be afraid of having to struggle through life, because we'll be stronger at the other end. So let's finish off by looking at the two key features of the poem. The first one is an extended metaphor. So obviously a metaphor is just when you say something is something else. An extended metaphor is when you say something is something else, but for a long period of time. So rather than just saying it in a short little sentence, this whole poem is saying that trees are like people. So what you see in trees, them growing stronger after having to face obstacles, is what you also see in people. So the fact that it's talking about trees and people almost interchangeably throughout the whole poem just shows that this is a big metaphor, and the name for that is an extended metaphor. Another technique that's a bit more advanced is the rhyme scheme. So the actual rhyme scheme is very clearly AABB, the couplets, there's rhyming couplets throughout the whole poem. That's not hard, but actually analyzing that is the more tricky part. So why have I highlighted this AABB rhyme scheme as a key feature of the poem? Well, to answer that, I'll say that having AABB, AABB, and so on rhyme scheme throughout the poem makes it very structured, very logical, very ordered. Now, having a poem that sticks to this very simple and clear pattern throughout the whole thing makes the message seem very believable and very convincing and strong. By having it conveyed so plainly to the audience, it's able to just express the idea very easily. We're all able to understand it, and we all believe it. The fact that it's so straightforward and to the point, it just makes it seem like it's a very obvious idea, and yep, we should definitely believe what the poet is saying. So the rhyme scheme is actually very important in making the idea easy to understand and also very believable, because the rhyme scheme is just so structured and ordered. So yeah, that's this poem, Good Timber.